Question 17 is a critical thinking question. We can jump to the end to see what type it is. It's asking us which, if true, would strengthen the above argument the most. So we'll be introduced to new information and asked whether or not it would strengthen the argument presented in the paragraph, which I'll read now. Overprescription of antibiotics by doctors who respond to patient demands has raised the drug resistance of harmful bacteria. Drug-resistant bacteria can make routine surgery and minor cuts fatal if infections take hold. We could introduce penalties for doctors who overprescribe, but this would not be enough. Given the scale and escalation of antibiotic resistance, we need to discover a new class of antibiotics. In the past, pharmaceutical companies have not regarded antibiotic research as profitable. Governments should give financial incentives to the pharmaceutical industry to intensify work on finding new classes of antibiotics. These can be kept in reserve for emergencies, for example, a global epidemic. This would make it more attractive to pharmaceutical companies to carry out the necessary research. So we can see an argument emerging here that overprescription of antibiotics leads to increased drug resistance, and the route forward should be to get pharmaceutical companies to come up with new classes of drugs which could then be kept in reserve for emergencies like epidemics. Let's look through the potential new information sources which may or may not strengthen the argument. We'll start with A, which says that government will not allow routine sales of a new antibiotic except in an emergency. This very closely reflects this statement here, that the new class of antibiotics, developed because of overprescription and development of drug resistance to the others, would be kept for emergencies, like an epidemic. If this was reflected in government policy, as this statement suggests, that would strongly strengthen the argument. Option B says that in some countries antibiotics can be bought without a prescription. Now, given that the argument strongly suggests that overprescription is the cause of this increased drug resistance, this statement clearly does not support it, in fact offers an alternative view. Option C suggests that antibiotics are useless versus viruses and often unnecessary for mild bacterial infections. Well, this doesn't strengthen the argument, as the argument is predicated on overprescription being the major factor in causing resistance. The definition of overprescription implies that this must already be the case, namely that there are circumstances in which antibiotics are inappropriately prescribed, this being one of them. Finally, D says that the use of antibiotics in livestock production has increased bacterial resistance to several antibiotics. Firstly, livestock production is an animal model which doesn't necessarily apply to humans. Secondly, this argument clearly suggests that it's doctors overprescribing due to patient demand which is causing increased drug resistance. This is suggesting an alternate method for increased drug resistance in the population. So we can see that the answer is A, which gives the new information that governments will not allow routine sales of the new antibiotic which will be kept for emergencies, which supports what is said in the argument.